How's everybody today? Well, it's game week, so time to set sights on someone else. I think that the players on the team who are great competitors, obviously their energy, their enthusiasm, their intensity, sense of urgency, realize that now is the time to get it done. Next week at this time is too late. And one of the greatest things in sport that you have a chance to overcome with good preparation is regretting that you didn't do all the things that you needed to do to prepare well, to play well. And that's certainly what we want to get accomplished this week in practice. The identity of this team, obviously, this is the first opportunity against a very good team to sort of establish or start to establish what the identity of this team really is, what the personality of this team is. You know, each individual player sort of makes the team what it is. The team does not make them what they are. And it's important that we have the kind of competitive character individually and collectively that will allow us to play with consistency, the kind of toughness, to be the kind of relentless, competitive team that makes a team that no one wants to play, which is sort of our goal, always our goal, and what we try to accomplish as a team, as a program, as an organization. We're releasing a depth chart today. I hope everybody here is happy because of that. And I have to define one word, because I remember last year someone did not know the definition of or. Or means either or. It doesn't mean one guy's ahead of the other. That's why the or is there. It means there are still positions on our team where there is competition for who may play, who may back up, what their role may be in a certain situation. Example, offensively, sometimes you play 3 receivers, sometimes you play 4. Maybe a guy fits into a role better as a 3rd or 4th receiver than he does actually on the depth chart. So he ends up playing a little bit more in a certain situation. Defensively, we may have a guy who really doesn't have a role in regular down defense, but he's a significant contributor on 3rd down or in nickel or in some other circumstance. So, you know, those things are sort of hard to define because in the old days of football, back when I played, which was many moons ago, there was only one personnel group. Whatever you played on offense, and there was no nickel, so you played 11 guys on defense and 11 guys on offense, and that was sort of it. Now we have run out of colors. We color code personnel for the people that we play. We don't have enough colors. There's not enough to name all the personnel groups that people play with to feature their talent. So just that bit of an explanation. We're not trying, and I've certainly answered any questions that you have about those kind of guys, but we're not trying to hide anything in what we presented to you. The next 3 days, very important, I think, I've already talked about some intangible things like enthusiasm, intensity. All these things sort of indicate a sense of urgency and immediacy. The preparation, to me, goes a long way to say how intelligently you will play, how many mental errors you will make because of the preparation and having it now. It doesn't just come when the game comes. You need the repetitions and you need the focus and attention to detail to get the little things right so that you can perform well. You know, nobody really performs well if they don't have those things. I think we found that out last year. I hope we found it out last year when we played in the Sugar Bowl. We're playing a very, very good team. Virginia Tech is an outstanding football team. They've been an outstanding team. They know how to win. Frank Beamer has done a fantastic job there for a lot of years. He's one of the winningest coaches, active coaches in college football. Offensively, they have a lot of starters back. They've got a lot of good skilled players, and Tyrod Taylor is an outstanding quarterback who is a playmaker type, who really does a good job of. Everybody thinks he's just a running quarterback. I don't really see him that way. He can create and pass the ball and make plays with his feet as well as creating to make pass plays. And I think those kind of guys are hard to defend, and they have a good offensive line, a couple good tight ends, an outstanding tight end, a big athletic guy, Boone. So they've got a lot of good players defensively, which is what they're kind of known for. They're in the top 10 in the country. They're one of the top teams in turnover margin, seems like every year. And their battle cry is really how well they play on special teams. So they do have some significant players on defense. Number 6, a defensive end, is really a good player. They've got a really good secondary. They really do a good job of executing their scheme. And the one thing that I would say about this team is they have toughness. They play with toughness, and you're going to have to match that toughness and intensity if you're going to have an opportunity to have success against them. Questions?
Can you talk about the advantages in terms of pass rush when you play the 3-4 as opposed to the 4-3?
Well, I think the advantage is not necessarily in alignment of the 4 guys that are rushing. I think the multiples are greater of who may be rushing. So therefore, who blocks who becomes a little more of an advantage to the defense. When you play 4 down guys, the offensive line is almost always going to block the 4 down and some linebacker. That's who those 5 guys are going to have. But when you play a 3-4 or any kind of odd, they have to block the 3 down and 2 stand-up guys, but you have 4 stand-up guys that can actually rush. So they may be wrong, so you have more multiples to overload protection or to isolate on the back on a bigger guy. I think that's the advantage. The alignment itself is not an advantage. It's more schematic than it is sort of individual personnel-wise. Most people in passing downs still like to get in a 4 down, even though because you have more symmetry in the rush. Push the pocket better.
Hey, Coach. Frank Beamer said that he wasn't sure his team could win the national championship if they lost this game. He said he felt like it would be a different situation if Alabama was put in that scenario. Would you agree, just based on the power ranking of the conference and all that?
We have I think that's one of the advantages of playing in a conference like our conference. I think we've had 2 national champions. When we won, we lost a game. I'm just talking about SEC schools. Florida lost a game last year. LSU lost 2 games the year they won it, a couple years before that. So, but I don't know that I agree with his part of it. They have a pretty good schedule this year. I mean, they play Nebraska, they play Miami early in the season as well as us. So I don't know that I agree with that. I think any team that has 1 loss still has a chance to win the national championship, and I do think that there's evidence that a team with 2 losses has that potential as well. But if there's anything that I dislike about the whole system now, and I've always been a bowl guy, I've always been a guy that lots of positive reinforcement for a lot of players who get the opportunity to play in a bowl game for their efforts. If there's anything that has created a negative situation in college football, to me, it's the fact that there's only one thing that matters, and that's who wins the national championship. And I don't think that's fair to all the other good teams in college football or all the other players who play in college football. It's a pretty significant accomplishment to win the SEC. It's a pretty significant accomplishment to win the ACC. So, if there's a downside to our system right now, that's why I've always been kind of for the +1 thing where there's at least 4 teams involved in this. Maybe it wouldn't be so much that way, because if you had 4 teams, there would be 1 and 2 losses, would not knock you out of it, and there'd be a lot more people interested and a lot more teams at the end. So now we're talking about after the first game of the season, you're out of it. That's horrible. It's a horrible thought for any team to be out of anything after 1 game.
And also, even though the tickets are split 50-50, do you feel like this game is being played on SEC turf Saturday?
I don't have a feeling about that. I mean, everybody knows where Atlanta is. I don't think you have to major in geography to figure that one out. But and our fans have always been great. We've always traveled well. We appreciate their enthusiasm. It's certainly helpful to our team, and I know that our players really appreciate the support that they get. And I'm sure that, and I played at Virginia Tech, and they have very good fans too. But I'm sure our fans will do a great job in supporting our team in the game.
Coach, just talk a little about Mark Barron and what he's done to kind of separate himself here the last few weeks.
Mark has always been a really good player. I think that sometimes when guys haven't played their particular position, and he played so many positions in high school. He was a running back. He played receiver. He played linebacker. Sometimes he played safety, but most of the time close to the line. Those kind of guys have to develop a position and find a home when they become college football players. And he really hadn't played that much safety before, especially in the deep part of the field. But as he learned, we knew that he was going to be a very good player. And I've said this before, because he was such a good athlete, sometimes those guys get penalized because you want to use them in so many different ways. Maybe you cause more confusion than you need to, especially when they're young players. And I don't think there's any question that we might have done that last year. In our efforts to get Mark Barron on the field, we put him in more situations than maybe he was ready to handle, and that was my mistake, our mistake. But since he's settled into a position and he gets reps at that position, he's been a very productive player. He's a very good player. He's very physical. He's got good ball skills. He's got great range. Obviously doesn't have experience, but the way you get experience is to go out there and play. And we've been impressed with the spring that he had and the fall camp.
And also, when we got the depth chart last year, there were 3 first-year guys who had just been in for practice the month before. Now I count 1, and even he was in the spring. Is that a sign that the depth is getting more like what you would want?
Do you mean only 1 guy on the first 2 teams? First team starter? Well, it's a sign of one of 2 things. We either don't have as good a freshman, or the guys that are here are a little better. It's the only way I can explain it. But we do have a lot of good freshmen, and they're in a lot of them are in competitive positions to play, and I think there will be some freshmen that make a significant contribution to this team this year. And I think, Trent Richardson probably will. I think some of the depth in the offensive line are going to come from young players. I think Dre Kirkpatrick is a guy that, has a chance to, if he continues to develop and develops a sense of urgency about what to do as important as being able to do it might be, which is the maturity that young players have to sort of go through. There are several guys there's a couple linebackers that are in the depth that could eventually do some playing this year. Anybody that's listed on that chart has a chance to end up playing some this year.